Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here, welcome back to Outriders once more, and in this video I want to talk about the very important subject of the recent changes that we got with the new update, or should I say the balance changes that were implemented today, because this is kind of like a two-part kind of update, one of which was already implemented with today's maintenance, and the rest like the fixes and the crashes and all the other stuff will follow up next week. But in this video I specifically want to go over some of the testing that I've done, some of my opinions over many of these changes. Not all of them seem as bad as they are in the patch notes. A few of them were even completely miscommunicated and are not even close to what they actually are, but there are still a few left that concern me a little bit and are affecting my progression in the end game, and chances are will affect yours as well. So let's discuss all of that, and I specifically want to clarify one thing. This patch right now, the patch that you're seeing right here with the fixes, these are not implemented yet, by the way, like the online connection, the co-op, crossplay, and like the loss of inventory and whatnot. These are not yet implemented. These will be implemented next week at a date that PCF will announce beforehand. The part that indeed did apply in today's maintenance is all about that rebalancing section, which makes about the second half of the patch notes. So right off the bat, I want to start things off with one that was completely miscommunicated, and in actuality it's not even a nerf, it's just a fix of an exploit, but because of some very poor choice of words and a really interesting way of putting up a sentence, this has been completely miscommunicated to the entire fan base. And specifically I want to talk about that historian, bounty hunt, and monster hunt supposed nerf, which is not even the case. I just tested this in game and I can fully confirm that you can still get a legendary reward for finishing the track additional times after the first time you completed them. The way they worded this is pretty interesting, because they mentioned that you will no longer get granted legendary items for each subsequent completion, but the way they should have worded this is after each subsequent quest, which is in fact the exploit. So the track still gives you a legendary after completing all 10 of these, it's just that you can no longer do the exploit that was giving you a legendary every subsequent quest. And even if you read in between the lines and read the explanation forward after that main sentence, you will notice that it only mentions the exploit and not the legit rewards, the legit legendaries that you get for completing these tracks. So yes, you can still go ahead, still farm legendaries, still do them, because this was not actually removed. Now another change also in terms of loot nerfs was the adjustment to certain enemies in the monster hunt, like the Tuka Beast, Split Tooth, Sand Shifter, and Cold Claw. It doesn't even list how much they get nerfed, but I will just say this because I've already tested them. Instead of dropping the usual guaranteed 2 epics they would on each run, they only drop 1 this time around. But my gripe with this is on multiple levels. First of all, who even complained about this? When was even this a significant farming method to get you ready for the end game? Because this is something that you immediately abandon as you get into the expeditions, which give you way more rewards, way faster, of much higher quality, and of much higher power level. Because yeah, these are just on world tier 15, so I level 42, while the ones in the expeditions go way higher. Second of all, the way they nerfed this doesn't make any sense. The reason being is that even though these beasts were indeed nerfed, every single one of the other ones were not, to the point that the actual and true best specific enemy to farm in these monster hunts was never even touched. It still works, I tested this, and I find it kind of funny that they are nerfing these monsters which were not even that great of a farm in the first place, maybe with the exception of the Split Tooth, but even that was, you know, pretty inefficient compared to some of the other methods we already covered, and the other ones were even worse. nerfs, like literally even before the nerf, there's at least 2 more examples way better than literally all 4 of these at the same time, which were again not touched in this rebalancing, maybe in the future, but they aren't right now. So again, makes absolutely no sense to me. Even more so when you consider that Epic gear is not even the top gear that you're aspiring towards. So yeah, like 4 reasons for why this doesn't make any sense. But this brings me to a big point on the list, and the one that actually I think stings the worst. Everything up until this point is manageable. Like, yeah, the historians and the bounty hunts, they still give you those legendaries, they only fix the exploit. Also on the terms of like the epics, we can substitute them with way better methods anyway, but the ones that sting the most right now are the nerfs towards the Trickster and the Technomancer, but especially the Trickster, and more important, the expedition timer being reduced by a pretty big chunk. So I want to actually start things off with of course the Trickster, because this is a pretty big nerf right here. At least a 30% decrease in overall damage is what you're going to see with this new update. Reason being is because 2 of our most potent passives in the skill tree were actually brought down by quite a bit. One of them is called the Disruptive Firepower, and the other one is the Outrider Executioner. So previously using these in combination would give you a 100% increase in weapon damage, which translates to actually firepower on your actual stats sheets, and now it's only going to be about 70%. And you might be thinking, well, it's only a 30% DPS decrease, that can't be that bad, right? Well, I've done some tests and it's noticeable. Getting slashed like 30% of your damage right off the bat with no explanation is bad enough. If you couple that with the fact that you now have much less time to complete your previous expeditions, is a recipe for disaster, and I think that they went a little bit overboard with that. So let me actually show you an example with how your stats get modified. For example, starting with the Outrider Executioner, then we're going to test the other one, and then we're gonna test both of them at the same time, so you can see how much of a difference this is going to make, and why I said that it might be more than 30% of your actual DPS output. So right now my firepower is around 93,000, which means that I get a little bit over 90% in weapon damage bonus, which is not too shabby for a eye level 46 that I have right here on this character. Now watch what happens if I activate a movement skill, which activates the first 35% damage increase. So if I go back into my inventory, you will see now that my actual weapon damage bonus is 136%, and my firepower increased from like 93,000 to 115,000. So the tooltip in the class tree is a little bit wrong, because it doesn't increase your weapon damage but actually your firepower, which has a much bigger effect on your weapon bonus damage. So I know it's a little bit difficult to like wrap your head around all of these calculations, but let me give you a quick one right here with the 35% first modifier that we applied right here. So as you can see, yes, the firepower did increase by that 35%, which in this case it increased from 93,000 to 115,000. But look at the weapon damage bonus, that increased by 43%, because as I've said, firepower is not a 1-on-1 ratio with the weapon damage bonus. It's actually somewhere between 1 to 1.5, or at least between 1.1 and 1.5. I don't want to make the calculations right now, but you get it. You didn't just get that weapon damage bonus by 35%, you get it actually by 43% in this case. Now let me show you how this effect is going to multiply by even higher, and as a matter of fact, this is why the nerf is going to feel so significant, because if you activate both skills at the same time, so this is going to turn on both of those perks in a total of 70% damage increase. In this case, my new firepower has increased to 137,000, up from 93,000, and that translates to a weapon damage bonus of 180 plus, essentially almost doubling my previous one, which was only 93%. So as you can see, that 70% firepower increase translates to almost 100% weapon damage bonus increase, which is why that 30% nerf is also going to translate to a much higher nerf of, in my calculation, about 50 to 60%. So your literal damage, your weapon damage bonus will be affected anywhere between 50 to 60% just as a result of this nerf, which is way more significant than only 30 that you're looking at the raw numbers right there, because as I've said, firepower is not equal to weapon damage bonus, and it actually affects it a little bit more. So that's why right now, if you're playing with a Trickster, you're going to notice that you're severely underpowered compared to maybe levels that previously you were more than able and capable to complete in a timely manner. This is further accentuated by the fact that two of the best expeditions for farming, which was the Camp Plant and the Boomtown, were severely nerfed, or should I say buffed, I'm not even sure, but the timer was reduced by quite a bit. So essentially for the Camp Plant you had almost like 15 minutes previously to complete, now you only have a little bit over 10, which means that if you were able to complete it with at least 4 minutes left on the timer, which in my opinion was really good, this means that now you're going to be over that gold medal and you're only going to get a silver, because you're 11 minutes now instead of 10 or 9, however much this now requires. And the same goes for Boomtown. Now it's even more ridiculous, from about 7 to 8 minutes is now down to 6. So yeah, good luck with that. If you were unable, or if you were completing these with just a little bit on the timer, you're now not going to be able to do that, and you're going to have to bring down those levels a little bit. So in my humble opinion, the way they should have done this in order to truly call it a balance, that would have been to also add in a few buffs in the mix, especially for the underperforming skills or abilities or the anomaly builds. And even more important, they could have taken this opportunity to bring up the Devastator up to par compared to other classes and make it a little bit more viable in the end game. Now, does this mean that the Trickster nerf is unwarranted? Well, not really, not fully. It definitely is outperforming literally everything in the game on the highest level, but that is the problem. They specifically looked at only the highest level people who are doing like 1 million plus damage per hit and adjusted everything down to that. So this means that everybody else who is struggling to get to that point is going to feel the full force of that nerf, and it's going to continue for quite a little bit. So hopefully these will be accompanied by other balancings and changes and buffs to abilities that are actually underperforming, and not just like bring everything down to just make the class unusable in certain situations. That's just my opinion. Leave your comments down below, but this has been it with the analysis. Of course, more on this is gonna follow soon, including alternatives, but in the meantime, this is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.